number one was just leveraging the network that the MBA had. So my first internship was actually just a senior. I was playing football with him, and he said, "Hey, I know you come from a finance background and you worked in a fintech startup. There's this venture capital firm that does purely fintech investments. Are you interested in looking at it?" And for me, that was one of my learnings from the MBA as well. I said yes to every opportunity, whether I wanted to do it or not. I would try to say yes and then figure out post facto if I actually wanted to go through it. So then the senior introduced me to the partner at the firm, went through like 3 interviews, and I actually thought, hey, this might be a career path for me that I could actually pursue. And then actually interned there for 3 months. And I think the nice thing about internships is you get to decide if this is what you want to do for the future. And for me, at least for VC, the takeaway was I needed a lot more operator experience. I actually wanted to go build my own company at some point and then come back to the VC space. So that's why for me, it was a great experience, but I decided to put a pin on it. The second internship, which was the consulting internship, this was actually through the Biz Career. So they brought over Author Little to sort of do like a company presentation for us. And post the presentation, we just reached out to some of the speakers there and expressed our interest, asked them out to get a coffee chat. One thing led to the other. Soon it was apply for the internship. And then after sort of getting in those interviews, that's when I started that internship. But even again, in Author Little, there were 3 NUS MBA seniors who'd interned there as well. So already they had like a really good experience with NUS MBA people coming in and doing that internship. So again, it was leveraging that network, leveraging that alumni connect. And the last internship, which was Restaurants Brand International, this was a purely random LinkedIn application that I put in. It seemed interesting. I never thought I'd work for a burger company, basically. But applied, and curiously, I found out that there were actually 2 NUS MBA people working at RBI. And then I reached out to them, again, connected. They briefed me on what the job would be, what the internship would be like, and the interview process. And then I ended up interning there and actually liked the experience and joined them back full time. So I think it was leveraging the network that the NUS MBA had that mainly helped me get all of these 3 opportunities. Right. So even for me, making the switch from professional services to QSR was, for me, I had a lot of questions about it because it's something that I've never done before. And I was quite confused about whether I should be doing it. So that's where you have seniors who've been in the industry for about 5 to 10 years, who you can really rely on to give you perspective. And for me, that really helped make my decision as well. And the one thing I think they constantly emphasize is, no decision is irreversible. So if after 2 years you realize like, hey, maybe I'm not enjoying this too much, there's this large community that you have at your disposal to again reach out and go to another industry. And I think what they really helped me with was also how to approach opportunities. So all these 3 are in completely different industries and completely different roles. So it was about how to tailor your pitch to each one of them. You can't sort of go with the same pitch to a VC and then go to a QSR company as well. So it was having those coffee chats and getting that perspective of how to tailor your own story to fit what the brand is looking for. That was really helpful. And I think that only comes from having worked in the industry for X amount of years and gone through the experience themselves. So I think that for me was quite another takeaway apart from just getting referrals and other stuff from the alumni. So I think number one is you just sleep less. You have 24 hours in a day. That's not controllable. So what you can control is how much you sleep, how much time you spend doing other things. So it was a lot of conscious prioritizing and really defining I used to take it a week at a time and really defining it down to the T. So number one was I leveraged the really flexible structure that the MBA had. So especially when I did internships that were during a semester, I would opt for classes that were later in the evening or on the weekends, or I would sort of talk to professors and get a feel of what the course load would be like. And also I made a conscious decision sometimes where I was okay with not getting an A+ grade in that course. I wanted to sit in on the class because I was really curious about what the subject would have to offer, but I knew that maybe I wouldn't do as well in the exams because I just didn't have time to prepare for it. But that's like sort of a decision that you make for yourself. And I also think communicating with, so in the MBA, a lot of the projects are team-based projects. So I was always lucky to be in groups of people who understood how busy I was. So they would sort of cover up for me when I couldn't make it for a meeting, or I would sort of have, if they knew I had an important presentation or a meeting at work, they would sort of take slack for me and really put in the stuff that I had to do. And I would repay that favor as well later on when they were busy. So I think it was a lot of, like Munira said, it took a village to raise a kid. I think it took a village to really help me get through the process of doing 3 internships and the MBA. But it was mainly just, setting clear priorities and boundaries, deciding where you want to make those sacrifices, and you just sleep less. So the first internship, I did that during Sem 1. So it was like a part-time internship. The second internship was over the summer, and then the third internship was a credit-bearing internship. So actually, even in the third internship, the requirement of credit-bearing internship is X amount, but the actual internship that the company offered was Y. So BizCareers really helped step in, and they would have direct negotiations with the HR of the company to say, hey, if you want one of our students to come, you have to like change it. And they were very accommodative with sort of making modifications for me as well to fit the internship requirements. So there was a lot of support from Julia and her team over there to really help make this internship process a lot more streamlined. And then I think the other thing is, some Saturdays I just used to walk into the office and catch up with people, and they would ask like, hey, how's work going? What projects are you working on? And when I would share, they would help connect me to someone else they knew who did something very similar in another industry. And hey, you should reach out to the student, similar experience. So I think there was a lot of support throughout the internship process as well, rather than just in discovery from the BizCareers and the other avenues that the MBA had. So for the credit-bearing internship, it's like you have a mentor as well that you have to pick, who's generally like an NUS alumni. And then there's most of the MBA internships are structured in a way where you have like an end project that you sort of get gauged on. So throughout the process as well, and my NUS MBA mentor was Nalin, who's also leading the Launch Your Transformation program. So we would sit every month, and he would sort of go through the company presentations that I was doing and really take time out of his schedule to help tailor make it a little more better. So throughout that process, the mentorship that the BizCareer sort of helps connect with really helps as well. And also, yeah, I think they share a lot of examples of students who've done it before. So there's always a point of reference that you can go back to. But yeah, that covers it. I think number one, having studied in India, it's not having that intense pressure on grades. It really helps because then you can really step out of your comfort zone and take up courses where you know nothing about and you're not scared of failing it because that's not like a criteria. So it really becomes, learning actually becomes like super enjoyable versus wherein you're in a really rigorous academic environment where you sort of pick grades over actually learning. So that for me was the main difference between coming from the Indian system and what the NUS MBA had to offer. And second, it was just also having professors who are from the industry itself. I think those were my favorite classes where the professor is someone who works a 9 to 5 and then they teach because they're passionate about it. That for me was like some of the courses that I did that had those kind of professors. When I compare it to my friends who like sort of studied in India, I think that was very different versus what the Indian education scene would be like. I think the framework you could sort of follow is one, figure out what career path you want to follow, say if it's HR consulting. And the easiest way to pivot into something is to do an internship in it. Because then you get a foot in the door and you really get a chance to like prove that you can do something that you don't have experience in. Versus applying directly to a full-time job without having relevant experience in it becomes a lot harder. So at least for me, if someone would ask that question, it would be find an internship in the organization or in the career path that you want to follow and focus on killing the internship. And then after that, it gets a lot more easier to make that pivot. I think the NUS MBA helped open a lot of doors for me. And then it just depends on how prepared you are when that door opens to really take that opportunity. And the resources are all there. It's just what you make of it. So no, that's all I had. Thanks so much.